All right, Rush to Reason. Denver's Afternoon Rush, KLZ 560. John Rush, Andy Pate, Lindsey Singer joining us now. Colorado Rising Action. Lindsey, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'll be better when it's above 70 degrees.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I think all of us will be. Maybe this weekend. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, so got several things to talk about. Let's talk about the fight for TABOR, not against it, but for it.
Yeah, so let's talk about this because coming up on the ballot in November, we're going to have Rep CC, that's double C, and its goal is to keep our taxpayer bill of rights refunds. Okay. So the people who want this are saying that they'll use the money that comes from it to fund transportation and education needs, which is something that, especially transportation, something they really didn't fund during the session, and I think most Coloradans can agree needs to be funded, especially roads, bridges. I'm not talking about more sidewalks and buses.
You mean like our new CDOT head of CDOT is talking about how we need more,
railways.
More modes of transportation, not roads, but modes of transportation.
Yeah, let's not fix what we have and desperately needs repaired. Let's think about new ideas that need funding.
Let's have more of those bikes.
Yeah, exactly. The electric bikes that get left everywhere.
Well, and Lindsey, bear with me here. And this is something that I feel like you guys and others need to continue to focus on and work on, which I know you do, and I appreciate it very much. But as I'm a car guy, have been my entire life, and I think part of what's made America as great as it has, especially in the last 100 years, is frankly the automobile. The automobile has given Americans freedoms beyond what even other countries allow their people to do. We can travel across this country, state to state, no papers needed. You need a license plate, and registration, and in some cases, proof of insurance, and you can go from coast to coast, no problem. I do believe I do believe that driving is a privilege, not a right. But here's my point: the left, and I believe this firmly, the left hates the automobile because of everything I just said. What the automobile does is gives us freedom to move about and do things that they cannot control and keep track of. That's why they want to see less roads, less lane mile, more buses, more rail, because they can control us when they do that. They cannot control us when we get behind the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but one of my biggest issues with this is there's actually no guarantee that any of this money is going to go to transportation. So what we're really talking about is getting rid of the taxpayer's bill of rights, at least the refund part of it. And that's just chipping away at something that Colorado has that keeps our spending in check that no other state in the nation has.
Well said. And real quick, by the way, everybody listening that's new to this state, TABOR is what's helped keep Colorado taxes low because we have accountability in our legislative process where they can't just run out, and even though they still do to a large extent, but it does keep some checks in place to where they can't just run around and spin like a bunch of drunken sailors.
Lindsey?
Yeah, and I want to do a quick history lesson because the reason that this Ref CC is such a big deal is because we have a view of what happens when we pass something like this. We did this in 2005. It was a temporary pause on us getting tax refunds, which we can talk about. That doesn't happen very often anyway because of other reasons. But voters said, yeah, you can keep our tax refunds if you put it towards these certain priorities. And that didn't happen. And what else? The other thing that Referendum C did is it permanently raised the bar for the spending limit. So without getting into the weeds too much, it moved the goal line for Colorado taxpayers back by $2 billion to the point that they would even, possibly get a tax refund. So now they're asking for this to be a permanent keeping, and to not call it a tax refund is just disingenuous. If you're not keeping your tax money that you would be getting from these refunds as a tax increase. So let's just call it what it is.
Got it.
Lindsey, I got two quick questions for you. First of all, if they say, hey, we'll take the money, we'll put it into roads and bridges, actual roads and bridges. Okay, can't they just take the money, put that money into roads and bridges, that amount, and then take that amount out of what would have gone to roads and bridges and put it into something else? Isn't money just fungible?
Yeah.
I'm sure they could do all kinds of switching like that, but they wouldn't even have to go that far because even if voters pass this, it's a statutory change. It's not an amendment. So the next legislative session can put that money anywhere.
So they can just take that money and go wherever they want to with it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was my first thing, because whenever they say we're going to put the money to the kids, to the roads, to the whatever, I always think, Yeah, but what about the money that was going to that? You're just going to displace it and move it to buying, buying votes from your preferred groups.
That's exactly
Here's the other thing. You say you look at the history of this. Okay, what about the history of TABOR? Since TABOR was put in place, where has Colorado stood as an economically nationwide?
Great point.
Every year,
that's a really great
virtually
point.
every year, we're number one or top five at least in economic growth. Am I right?
Yeah, I think you are right, especially this last couple of years. I know we've made a lot of the list of best places to live, top economy in the nation. And that's not by accident. We're the only state in the nation that has this kind of a voter's right to choose what tax increases we get. So it's pretty incredible where we're at. And also, when TABOR was being passed back in the early 90s, the Democrats were saying, this is going to be a disaster. Our state's going to tank, all these terrible things. And that obviously has gone the opposite direction. So I don't really think we can trust what they have to say.
Quick comparison. California doesn't have TABOR. We do. Who's looking better on their budget?
Oh.
Game, set, match.
Yeah,
right?
No question about it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And if I was convinced that, the government was spending our $33 billion budget well, I may feel a little bit differently about this, but I just don't. That's not how I see things.
You just said something that never happens anyways. Government spending well. I don't know of a government anywhere in the entire world, especially here in the U.S., Lindsey, that fits. It just never happens.
Yeah.
Lindsey?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what do you say to a young person, though? Young people always want to believe that government can spend the money well. A majority likes socialism. What do you, as somebody who is, let's face it, smart, really smart on this stuff, what do you say to a young person to quickly kind of, I don't know, at least raise an eyebrow, raise some interest in the fact that, hey, we really need TABOR. We really need the right to actually vote on our own taxes and keep what isn't spent?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends who I'm talking to and where I think they're coming from. But I think just talking about the state of Colorado's economy right now and how businesses, feel secure in making decisions about staying in Colorado because of the way that our taxes work and because of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, and that it's not, what I said before, that it's not a coincidence that we have the best economy in the nation. I talk about that, and then, it just depends where they're coming from, what other issues are important to them. But
it's interesting
that's a big
too.
thing for
It's
me.
interesting. The opponents of TABOR said that the TABOR-induced regulations or reductions, I should say, in government spending have led to curtailed government services, including those that voters and businesses alike care most about. Now, I'm going to ask anybody out there, you're welcome to call in even after Lindsey goes off air here with us. Lindsey, answer me a question. Do you feel there's any government services that we're lacking in the state of Colorado?
I don't. I know what people mean about some of the spending restrictions, but I think that, that's sort of the point. Like, spend the money you have wisely, and then, on the local level, ask your community if you can spend more of your tax money. And in some cases they approve that, and in a lot of cases they don't. And that just means you need to spend the money that you get more wisely. But still in Colorado, our spending continues to increase, which I think is very confusing to people, even though we talk about this so much and how many limits they have. And that's because of things like enterprises and fees that are exempt from the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, having to ask the taxpayer to increase them. And so I think that can be really confusing to voters.
No, it is confusing at times because we do still have a growth in our taxes, and it has to do with the growth of the state. And TABOR has some things that coincide with that allow certain things to increase depending upon our growth and so on. And the dissenters will still tell you that we don't grow our government spending fast enough. They think we should be spending more in that particular area. And Lindsey, you know me, I'm one that would say no. In fact, I think we spend far too much in certain areas. There's things right now, even in the state of Colorado, if I was governor, I would cut back and or cut out that we frankly don't need as a state.
Sure. Yeah. So to that point, so enterprises are something that it's basically a business that is can fund itself. It's like a university or a state park where you pay to use it. But that has more than doubled since 2005. The proportion of enterprises in our budget has more than doubled, and taxpayers have no say on that. So
wait, Lindsey, before you run on, I want to. Would you include things like the fees you pay to go into state parks and things like that?
Yeah, I would. I would include that under enterprises, and then there's another section of fees, but I think that a lot of politicians and lawyers have specifically tried to label things more and more as enterprises to grow that bucket, so they don't actually have, taxpayers have less and less control the more that enterprises take up our budget.
So it's like using the word invest. We have to invest in our kids. We have to invest in this, invest in that, and so all that means is spend.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well said. Lindsey, it's always a joy having you. Appreciate taking your time. We'll talk to you again next week. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, if you would, please.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Lindsey, thanks so much. We'll come